All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the MPA Social Sciences and Humanities Postdocs Special Interest Summit. My name is Amy Wilson. I am the MPA's Marketing Director and Office Manager. Tom Kimbus, our Executive Director and CEO, is unfortunately under the weather and won't be able to join us today, so I'm stepping in his place. He does want to send his thanks and appreciation to everyone participating today for their hard work and dedication to improving equity in the postdoc environment. Now in its fifth year, the Special Interest Summit aims to identify barriers and find pathways forward in the broader postdoc community that significantly and/or disproportionately affect specific demographics. And this year, we are focusing on our social sciences and humanities postdocs. Before we get into some of our housekeeping tips, I do just want to give a special thanks to the task force of this summit. Angela Crumdy, one of our Impact alums, Victoria Hallinan, our partner organization at Sphere, Tanya Pais, our chair of our community committee, Robin Segura, one of our MPA board members, Henkel Valentine, vice chair of our community committee, and I was also a part of that particular task force. So on the next slide, we outline some of our housekeeping tips. So just as a reminder, you should have received an email with the Zoom links for every particular panel. You will have to log into those unique links for each panel itself. Each panel does have an individual moderator who will start the session and go over tips with you. Our first panel that you're currently in will be moderated by Victoria. As mentioned, she is Program Director for Professional Development, the Office of Postdoc Affairs at Yale. Panel 2 will be moderated by Robin Segura, Director of Postdoctoral Training in the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs at Stanford University and an MPA board member. Panel 3 will be moderated by Angela Crumdy, Director of Programs and Research at Education Nonprofit, and also, as mentioned, a former Impact Fellow. And then panel 4 will be moderated by Kati Kishbaran, a postdoc research fellow at MIT. Also, along with those housekeeping tips, just so you know that these sessions are being recorded, they will be available in the MPA's webinar archives next week. We are asking that you stay muted just to make sure that there is no interference or background noise. And also, we might suggest that you turn off your cameras and just to ensure that we have bandwidth as numbers do get larger. Each panel's moderator will outline how they will handle Q&A for their particular session. And just as a reminder, speakers are appearing as individuals, sharing their personal and professional information. These interest summits do cover difficult topics, and so we encourage you to use resources provided by your institution's postdoc association or postdoc office. We also have additional resources on for the postdoc community in our resource library that we encourage you to access. And before I turn this over to Victoria, we just have one last piece of information on the next slide. Just as a reminder, our 2026 MPA Annual Conference will be taking place March 13th and 14th in San Francisco, California. Early bird registration does end today. So if you have not registered, we encourage you to do so. It's a great two-day event with a lot of professional development opportunities and networking opportunities. And our attendees always find it to be very beneficial to connect with others within the postdoc community. So those are all our announcements. Do feel free to, again, to utilize the chat. And with that, I will pass this on to Victoria.
Thank you so much, Amy. And first, wanting to thank Amy, as well as the rest of the task force that put together today's amazing program. And I'm going to keep this slide up here just temporarily, as we'd like our panel to be a roundtable discussion between not only our panelists, but you all, our participants. As Amy mentioned, my name is Victoria Hallinan. I work in the Office for Postdoc Affairs at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. And I'm also an organizer of a community of practice called Sphere, which aims to support postdocs in the social sciences, physical and natural scientists, engineering, humanities, through creation of resources specific to their needs, as well as aiming to understand their specific experiences where they may or may not overlap with other disciplines, and finally to bring together both postdocs and those who support them to create fantastic cross-institutional events for the benefit of those beyond the community itself. I'll put a link a little later into Sphere just to give you some information, as I can't help but I want to get others excited about this group. But I'm primarily here today for our panel, which is going to bring together an incredible group representing a variety of disciplines, lived and learned experiences, diversity of the kinds of work each panelist does and the work context. And together they'll be sharing what they've seen in terms of the wonderful scholarship, work, teaching, research of social scientists and humanists, as well as starting a conversation which will continue throughout today's program around the kinds of skills and experiences these scholars can and may wish to cultivate to be successful in their current role, as well as their future career step. We recognize many of you may be postdocs or work with postdocs, but I also want to frame this session as useful and adaptable if you are here as a graduate student or those supporting graduate students, that we have aimed this to be a session focused on social scientists and humanists in a broader way, even as we are representing the National Postdoc Association. All right, so I'm going to introduce our panelists in brief before we'll move into some prepared topics for conversation that they have highlighted, and then Q&A with yourselves. I'll offer a little more guidance when we move into the question and answer portion, but we'll be using the chat primarily for that function. So I'm going to start with introducing Dr. Caleb McKinney, who is the Senior Associate Dean for Training, Program Development, and Academic Innovation at Georgetown University School of Medicine. His offices support marketing and recruitment, career development, and academic program development for graduate education. And he has also led a variety of externally funded workforce development programs that span career stages from K-12 to junior faculty. Dr. McKinney has served on several advisory boards for workforce development training programs, and he has previously served as chair of the board of directors for the National Postdoctoral Association. He received his BS in biology from Cornell University, his PhD in microbiology from New York University, and his master's degree in design management and communications from Georgetown University. Dr. McKinney is joined by Cynthia Berg, PhD, who is Distinguished Professor of Psychology at the University of Utah. She's a lifespan developmental health psychologist whose research examines how family members facilitate or derail the management of chronic illnesses across the lifespan, especially in diabetes. Dr. Berg has trained postdoctoral fellows as part of her collaborative and interdisciplinary research teams from psychology, nursing, and pediatrics. Her research has been funded by the National Institutes of Health and private foundations and has received numerous awards for her research and mentoring. She further served as Dean of the College of Social and Behavioral Science from 2013 to 2022. Dr. Berg is further joined by Erica Makalak, a medievalist turned entrepreneur and the author of Hustles for Humanists, Build a Business with Purpose, which came out from Rutgers University Press this year. As the founder of HICMA, she leads a social impact startup with a mission to mobilize scholarship for the public good through consulting, capacity building, and storytelling. Over the past 5 years, HICMA clients have secured more than $12 million in funding to create evidence-based resources and tools, inform policies, and craft accessible communications published by Forbes, the CBC, and other platforms. She holds degrees from the University of Pennsylvania, a BA, a Master's of Studies from the University of Oxford, and a PhD from the University of Notre Dame. Our panel is rounded out with Mark Lawson, PhD, who is Professor in Residence of Reproductive Medicine and co-director of the Maximizing Access to Research Careers, or MARC program, and serves as chair of the Stem Cell Research Oversight Committee at UC San Diego. His research focuses on endocrine signaling in reproductive physiology, with over 50 peer-reviewed publications. He has received numerous honors, including the UC Equal Opportunity Affirmative Action and Diversity Award. A dedicated educator and mentor, Lawson has led NIH-funded training programs and served as faculty director for postdoctoral education. As director of the UC President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, He oversees system-wide efforts to advance faculty opportunities, mentorship, and policy development for postdoctoral scholars across all UC campuses. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming our fantastic panelists. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing this slide with their faces so that we can focus on them in real time. And they should be appearing pinned on your screen here. And I'm going to ask first for each of them to share a little bit more of their context and to share a bit of the kinds of work that they do with social scientists and/or humanists, whether that is research, teaching, supporting their professional development or their career. And I'll go in that same order and turn it over to Dr. McKinney first.
Sure, thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I'm actually classically trained as a wet lab microbiologist. And so I'm sure when Victoria said my title and I'm saying my context, you all are probably like, what the heck is he doing here? And I know when Tom invited me, I was like, are you sure you want me on that panel? But hear me out. It wound up making a lot of sense. So during my past 10 years, my work has pivoted quite extensively to biomedical education research and development of scientific workforce development initiatives. And so my current work is focused on really understanding the needs of my constituents and designing educationally oriented interventions to help primarily STEM students, postdocs, and faculty with their career development and advancement. And so I hope to share some reflections throughout our time together in the next little bit about various experiences that I've had with bridging disciplines and where I've had seen really great contributions that social scientists and humanists make in the biomedical context in particular. And so I'll end my initial remarks with just a little 30-second case example of a project that I co-lead at Georgetown University Medical Center. And so I co-lead a faculty development or early career investigator development project called Discover. We love our acronyms, and that's funded by NIH, and it helps to develop postdocs and early career faculty at Georgetown. And so through this initiative, we provide pilot funding and professional development to an annual cohort of early career investigators, and that's meant to expand their research capacity on improving equitable health outcomes in the Washington, D.C. area. Some are clinicians, some are biomedical researchers, but importantly, some of our awardees have been social scientists who use mixed methods approaches to examine lived experiences of the communities that we're trying to impact, and that can inform policy, very importantly, give us strategies for enhancing engagement with the community, which can sometimes be rate limiting in establishing that trust with some of our community partners and community constituents for this important work, and then evaluating health equity programs. So that's one example, and I'll give other examples throughout the other questions, where I particularly see social scientists and humanists thriving and contributing in an interdisciplinary biomedical context.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Can I turn it all over to Dr. Berg next?
Great, thank you. As was mentioned, the work I do is really looking at how families can facilitate or derail chronic illness management. And postdoctoral fellows that I have worked with are typically funded off of our NIH grants. I also served as in administrative roles for about 12 years. And in some of those positions, I actually had a postdoctoral fellow that also assisted me as part of those administrative positions. And postdoctoral fellows were typically managing large longitudinal data sets that we were collecting. Very frequently, these postdoctoral fellows came to us looking for some expertise in team science, which is what we do. And so they really were looking at the ability to enlarge their work into fields that would intersect with the health field. And so that works really nicely with us. They oftentimes came to us, sort of trying to really address what they viewed as areas of improvement in terms of publications and analytical skills. And so they very frequently left that in our group with a much larger CV in terms of publications, also some grant writing ability, as well as some new quantitative skills. We work very closely with a number of quantitative psychologists, So that was sort of a perfect fit for them. I would say that when I've had worked with postdocs, this is typically a lifelong relationship. I still am very much in contact with people and writing. I just was asked this week to write a letter for an early career award. Most of the postdocs that we work with are oriented towards sort of an R1 faculty position, although we've had some people that were at the VA. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. And on to Dr. Makalak next.
Thanks, Victoria, and thanks to the whole NPA team for making this possible. It's wonderful to be here with such fellow panelists and presenting on this topic that's near and dear to my heart. So as Victoria mentioned earlier, I'm the founder of a social impact startup called Hikma. And sometimes I call us a knowledge mobilization agency, which in Canada, the term knowledge mobilization refers to loosely what is often called in the US public scholarship, but basically all of the ways and mechanisms that we use to transform research into action and public good. I've had this business for about 5 years now. It uses my medievalist PhD training in all kinds of ways, and that we can talk about a little bit more later. But I'll just share in the chat some examples of the kinds of client projects that we work on. Typically, it's faculty members from all kinds of disciplines at all career stages coming in saying, I have this idea. It's either at the beginning stages or we've been working on this for a decade and we're trying to figure out how to take it to the next phase. Can you help us? Tends to be faculty who are really motivated to do climate or social justice work, faculty who are working with large teams, lots of trainees, lots of non-academic partners, and either looking for help with the storytelling to articulate the project, for media, for grant proposals, for explaining it to new partners, for some kind of training and capacity building to figure out how to run the project better or get the team all on the same page. A lot of times I'm in the room with faculty and their partners trying to figure out how to clarify what the new goals and questions are. And throughout this work, whether it's in wildfires and lung health or digital humanities or nurses, mental and physical safety in the workplace, survivors of genocides and mass atrocities, the disciplines are all over the map. And the ways that I see postdocs coming into play are being the connective tissue at all stages of the project to do all of these things that they may not be formally trained for, but that are essential to taking great research and transforming it into action. A lot of that is, as has been said, grant writing, also project management, sometimes teaching, training and mentoring younger or earlier career grad students and undergrads on the team. And I've just seen the amazing ways that they show up to support projects. And often those contributions are unnamed or not recognized in the ways that they should be. So it's nice to shed a little light on those today.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Dr. Lawson.
Hi, thank you for having me here on this panel. So I want to give a couple of different quick views about the work I do and where I think it falls in importance. So as was mentioned, I'm a trained as a microbiologist as well, Caleb, but I thereafter became a virologist and then a cell molecular biologist and an endocrinologist, and I work in reproduction. And as you might imagine, of a lot of medical disciplines, reproduction branches a lot of other aspects of life that that are relevant and very important to people seeking care. And understanding of that is what my business is. We do the STEM work of understanding how hormones function and systems are regulated physiologically and when things go wrong and how come they go right. All of those things that are important for the practice. One of the things I've come to appreciate and really understand over the years is as I've grown in my own work in training and mentoring and workforce development, working with postdocs from across all disciplines, which for me started very, very early in my career as a Ford Fellow, working with people, across all academic disciplines, was an understanding of how important interdisciplinary work is. and how it influences things. The questions that, say, in my discipline that we ask, or others may ask in biomedical sciences, are very much formulated by the understanding and the discussion of topics that otherwise are not addressed. And that's where social science work, humanist work is really important because it forms a lot of the questions that end up being addressed in the context of large research enterprises like biomedical science and other things. Why do we choose certain diseases to work on? It's the scientist's motivation to study something that directs that, and it's their education, their training, and their knowledge of important questions beyond just the lab bench and the pipetters that actually drive the priorities of our national research enterprise. The work that we learn, and not just in close things like, say, in schools of public health or other, maybe more quantitative social sciences, but actually the questioning, the discussion, all of those aspects are integral, and in the university context are important to have that sort of contact in order to generate the discussions that then formulate priorities and not only in educational priorities, but in research priorities and other things. And so seeing this as a whole, it's very important to make sure all disciplinary areas are well supported. In my role as director of the President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, one of the most important things that we do is that we encourage this community of scholars, because we don't know where the ideas are going to come from. I have people I'm working with now that are looking at, how does one do lifelong support for trans men and women in the context of endocrinology? Nobody even thought that was a question 5 or 10 years ago, but it's the research, the publications, the discussions that are had in other disciplines that bring these kinds of questions up. So my view of this is more that it is maybe higher level, but it's very integral to the overall operation of not only a university, but of how society addresses questions as they arise.
Wow. Thank you all for sharing so far the wonderful work you do, but already you're kind of answering my next question. So please dive in further detail or take it in a slightly different direction as you'd like, because you're already highlighting the importance of recognizing the work of social scientists and humanists. So let me ask, what do you wish others knew about these populations and their work? And feel free to interpret that as within the context of higher education, what you wish other disciplines knew or other populations in higher ed, or externally, more broadly, a public-facing response to the question as well. Up to you. I'll turn to Dr. McKinney first, and I'm curious to hear what you say.
So I'll approach this question from just kind of my frame of reference and perspective, and maybe one particular context, just to sort of bring it to life. And so I completed an educator's program in health professions and served on the faculty of that program for about 3 years. And the experience was really, really amazing. You have this really large community of medical and biomedical practitioners, clinicians, and researchers who who are bringing in like these cross-disciplinary education-focused projects that they refine during the program. So as you could probably imagine, based on their discipline context and training, a lot of them get stuck in navigating the research methods that are new to them with the scholarship around evaluating and assessing the design of educational research projects and interventions. And so many of them are siloed in kind of their clinical practices and in their professional networks as well. So that further reinforces that. And I don't think that they even think to engage with social science and humanities colleagues to join them in this work as they should. Some do, some of them get it, but many don't realize that they can, and they should try to form these mutually beneficial cross-disciplinary teams when possible. And I love my 30-second case example. So I've got a 30-second case example with the evaluative program that I helped lead for a train-the-trainer program that we developed at Georgetown Medical Center that trains a cohort of individuals in providing tailored bias reduction trainings to their individual sectors and within that individual sector context. And so we were doing an evaluative study of the program. And so we looked at our medical center at expertise in social science for thematic qualitative analysis. And so we recruited a colleague who had that expertise, asked her, do you want to be on this paper and join this research team? I know this is really random and we kind of came out of nowhere, but what do you think? And she happily joined. Um, and so she helped us do our qualitative thematic analysis to analyze our open-ended responses on our various surveys. And that was pivotal to our publication to help bring our quantitative data to life and demonstrate the impact of our initiative on the institution on the backdrop of a change management framework. And so being involved with that institutional level kind of program analysis was also very helpful to her with her career advancement as well. And so that just kind of shows the important contributions that social scientists and humanists could make in one particular example.
Yeah, and to mutual benefit as well. Really
Exactly.
appreciate that. Thank you. And on to Dr. Berg next.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. So I think in Utah, there is a really good understanding of what social scientists bring to these kind of teams. So much of the work on chronic illness management is on adherence, and we all understand that adherence really is a kind of a social science question, right? How is it that people, you can get people's willingness to change? And social scientists really come with theories where they can sort of address those questions with I think kind of like razor sharp kind of clarity. And I think also social scientists can really also bring, they typically are trained very well in quantitative statistics where they do their statistics themselves. And that is not typical on team science where you typically have a biostatistician. So it can help inform really great experimental design in terms of clinical trials. So their breadth of experience is really great. Oftentimes our postdocs who are working on our projects are kind of surprised they can't do the statistics because a biostatistician or a statistician on the project does it, but they come with that knowledge. And very much like Dr. McKinney said, they also come trained with these tools of qualitative analysis. So they can really span everything from community-based participatory research, which is really important right now in trying to understand special communities that have been underrepresented in health research, and they approach it in a very, very different way. So the background and training is really rich, and they bring a lot to these projects.
It's wonderful to hear about this culture you've helped cultivate at your institution around recognizing the value of social scientists and having that multiple or interdisciplinary perspective in research. Fantastic. Dr. Makalak, please.
Thanks, Victoria. I think when people talk about humanities and social sciences skills, often they're kind of written off as, oh yeah, soft skills, and we should talk about the value of soft skills or critical thinking. But one of the things I've seen play out in so many different ways at all of the moments in my career trajectory is how powerful teaching is and how many different skills and competencies are involved in the ways that we are trained to teach, and how many different ways that kind of training has translated into my own work and the ways that I see it play out in organizations across sectors way beyond the academy. One example that's very pragmatic is when I took my first job out of graduate school. I was working in a central grant development office at a university, and we took turns chairing the team meeting. And so that meant you had to write up the agenda, and then you had an hour to get through all the items on the agenda. Sometimes there were things that required discussion, and you had to get everybody on the same page at the end of the hour. It was a bunch of PhDs working in that office. It was very difficult to get everyone to focus and get on the same page and figure out their action items. But I could do it. The meetings that I chaired always wrapped up on time, and we always wrapped up with at least a few decisions made about how we were going to move forward. And that was because my training and teaching was teaching classes of 20 students or less, knowing that if the bell goes off, those students are leaving. So you need to get to the end of what you're doing by the end of class, and they need to know how to prepare for the next class if you're going to be effective at your job. You have to have the syllabus ahead of time. You have to be able to kind of evaluate and think on your feet and respond in the moment. A lot of those things I get paid a lot more for now when I call them facilitation, but being able to get into any organization and get everybody on the same page quickly, people at all leadership levels, especially the executive ones, recognize when you have saved them time and gotten things done and not had just another meeting where the outcome is let's schedule another meeting. So really thinking expansively and in concrete ways about what it means to translate those skills to different contexts is critical and way undervalued by social sciences and humanists and by employers beyond them, I think.
Fantastic. And just wanting to amplify that very much resonates with my own experience, starting off at first as a teacher instructor and then using that in leadership roles, in mentorship of individuals, and thinking about how do you make everyone in one room grow, even if they're coming from different perspectives and have a variety of priorities. And teaching is such a wonderful way to expand that skill and then adapt elsewhere. Dr. Lawson, please.
Hi. Yeah, so I sort of did preempt a little bit with with the final of my answer before, but I've got another short example of why this is really so important in this interaction, in this interdisciplinary work, and how valuable it is. And one of the examples, and this could happen in a lot of contexts, is um, is and again, it touches on priorities. In School of Medicine, we formed some committees in response to the George Floyd murder to think about what we were doing to either be part of or be part of a problem or part of a solution with the way we did our own work and how that and how to be aware of more things. And during the time of that, there was questions about why do we even bother? We're reproductive biologists and we do these things. And one of the topics that came up that was really central to giving our department essentially a sense of mission and purpose around that topic, but also the more general topic was how do we interface with the public, was learning the history of our own discipline, learning the history of medical schools and why they are even the way they are today. Why in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century there was an elimination of medical schools that trained women and underrepresented minorities across the country, leaving like Meharry as one of the last standing schools around. Why did that happen? What was the history behind that? There were more schools back then. Why were reproductive biologists, gynecologists, obstetricians so adamant in pushing sterilization of women throughout our history, and what responsibility does our discipline have in perpetrating things that today would be viewed as abhorrent and criminal? And surprisingly, very few of my colleagues understood or knew that history. And it was, people active in disciplines outside our bubble that made that attention that very clear. And so this very practical role of bringing to questions, not just of social justice, but of practice and of thinking and approach to how we teach, how we do medicine, how we do basic science research, are incredibly, they to be done well, they need to be taking this impact. So and again, you can kind of see my theme here. I'm not just thinking about the practical, how do you thrive in a team thing, but also thinking about this larger context and how how important it is to set national priorities about how we do things in something like deliver healthcare and other related aspects.
Very grateful for your comments there. I'm trained as a historian, so very much spoke to my heart. I'm going to ask our panelists to respond to one more prompt, but then move into Q&A, question and answer with you, the participants. So please start populating the chat with any questions as they respond to this final prompt. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can before our time wraps up today. But let me invite our panelists once more to reflect and to share. Is there something you wish social scientists and/or humanists themselves knew or recognized? And off to you, Dr. McKinney.
Yeah, I guess for this question, I think really recognizing the immense contributions that you can make to interdisciplinary collaborations and broaden your network to really start to engage with potential collaborators, because lots of other disciplines need you. Some of the STEM folks, we can be a little strange socially, so we may not always ask, and we may not always know how to ask. But if you find us in a room talking about our research and you have a way to contribute to that, that's a great opportunity. I'll do one of my last little 30-second case examples with another program that I had some funding through some years ago, the AIM Ahead program. Some of you may have heard of, but it's a NIH-focused program focused on training researchers to use AI and machine learning tools to advance health equity research. You can't do health equity research without community engagement, and AI algorithms are really only as good as how representative input the data is. And so community engagement is really key to this national initiative. And so a small part of this, and there's a small part of this initiative, my team created a video residency program. And we recruited a team of humanists as well as professional creatives to develop community-oriented videos that connect AI and healthcare research to human culture, history, and experience, so that this concept of AI and healthcare was not only more approachable, but it was overall demystified. And so the individual on my team who led this project at the time, we were connected through professional networks to humanists and artists. And so we were able to find collaborators to work with us on this project, but they kind of had to make themselves professionally available to be networked with, for us to find them. And so, if you're interested in these very sort of out of the box collaborations that types of things that I've mentioned, you have to sometimes be out of the box with who you engage in your professional network. And so that's been really profound for me in my career development as a classically trained microbiology biomedical researcher who is now a bit more extensively working with social scientists and humanists in my recent work. And so, just find yourselves in interesting rooms and in interesting conversations and see where it goes.
Thanks for celebrating networking as that kind of opportunity and to get outside of your archives, your classroom, wherever it might be, to meet with other disciplines and other opportunities. Dr. Berg, can I ask you to comment next?
Yeah, I love that. As a person who's trained as a classical pianist, I love the integration of the arts. So I agree. I think, as sort of a postdoctoral fellow, thinking about where you want to be, and right now it's an uncertain time, I'd have to say. If you were thinking of going to a truly academic career right now, that's a challenge. But just really think about what are the connections, what's the questions that you want to pursue, and make lots of connections. We have postdoctoral fellows who are at R1 institutions. We have others that are in the VA and now are directing centers, a Grec center for veterans. And so I think you can accomplish your kind of dreams in a variety of different places. We also have a lot of graduate students who are also pursuing industry-related positions. And I'd have to say 201, I always ask them when they come back and do these panel discussions and how could we do our training differently? And they say, just encourage people to feel like they do have the skills, because their skills that you're training are so transferable in terms of asking questions, Sometimes I think academia needs to move a little quicker to, teach people how to be adaptable in a variety of different situations. But the skills that we use in terms of investigating, thinking deeply about a question, how to come up with a strategy for answering that question in a way that is efficient and actually give an answer that's meaningful is very, very transferable to lots of different situations.
Very appreciative of you encouraging these populations to recognize their own value and their skills expertise and how they can apply to a variety of kinds of roles, especially when you need to be taking a broader look, whether you want to or the context is encouraging you to. Dr. Makalak, please.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I agree with and second everything that Caleb and Cindy have said. And to build on that, I'd say from my own experience, I mentioned in the beginning that I work in sort of a deep way with individual teams that are running initiatives. And often the initiatives are not primarily on the surface, social sciences and humanities projects. It's robots and sustainability, or it's medical stuff, but they're all looking at systems change. And inevitably, there's at least one SSH person on the team who is sort of the point person for lack of a better word, the people stuff, the person that is helping think through how to affect whatever the rigorous research is on a systems level. And often that also plays out not just in terms of the research skills, but in terms of thinking through the steps to engage well with partners, and even things like remembering to send the thank you note or remembering to frame the questions around what is actually going to be beneficial out in the world. And I think there's so much we could do to recognize that part of the work more, but I see it at all career stages within and beyond the academy. And from my own experience, I was going to say, I'm, we've mentioned a social impact startup founder. And so I think a lot about entrepreneurship. That's what my book Hustles for Humanists is about. And we've started designing courses around that topic. And we launched a course for early career academics earlier this year called Find Your Inner Founder. And we talked a little bit about people's actual business ideas. It was a lot of people in the program from the grad student through the early career professor stages, thinking about these ideas that they had and looking at these uncertain times and wanting to have both multiple career options, but explore new ways that they could actually bring these things to fruition in the world. But the thing that we talked most about was how to name the contributions that you're already making and choose what you want to offer. And then on top of that, as you're articulating what it is that you're bringing to the table, figuring out ways to signal and set your boundaries and to advocate for yourself. So that if someone is asking you to do something that is, in entrepreneurial terms, I'd call it scope creep. If someone's asking you to do something that's beyond your job description or beyond what's in your contract or what you have promised to do, sometimes it's okay to deliver that extra. Sometimes it means negotiating to be compensated better and making sure that you're getting rewarded in all the ways that we can talk about rewards. But even from your position, postdocs are often experiencing more precarity than others in the academy, but there are still ways to negotiate and advocate for yourself. Try not to be afraid to do that. And one way to build the case to be able to advocate for yourself is to make sure that you are documenting and naming and clarifying what your contributions are every step of the way so that you feel comfortable and confident talking about what it is that you're bringing forward.
Wow, you've each articulated amazing advice and strategies for these populations and just wanting to uplift that boundary setting, self-advocacy, but also that if you need assistance or again, normalizing having a mentoring team, not just a single faculty mentor or grad advisor, and as well to be thinking about other resources at your disposal, your postdoc office, your graduate dean, whoever that might be. Dr. Lawson, can you round us out, please?
I'll be very brief in just saying that the things that I observe being like underappreciated by themselves, by humanists and social scientists, and I'm sure they could say things about me on my side in STEM, is underappreciating the power of the skills that they've developed and honed during their training. The formulation of a question, addressing the question, coming to coming to a conclusion about it, interpreting the information you have, is a powerful skill and talent that, I've had former trainees come back to me and comment that they didn't recognize how valuable that skill is in so many different settings, and that how many people don't do that well because they're not trained in it, they're not aware of it. And so I just want to, make sure everybody understands that the skills that they're acquiring in your studies in addressing problems, coming up with answers, and essentially closing the circle of query and inference, is valuable in so many settings that it's almost limitless. You couldn't quantify it easily. Just so that the work and the skills is very, very fundamental to just operating organizations in the first place.
Perfect way to wrap up that prompt, especially highlighting the power of self-reflection and to continuously think about the experiences, skills developed, and recognizing how much scholars in these areas are able to accomplish for others and also for themselves. I know we have limited time left. I have a question from the Q&A. I'm also going to put it in the broad chat to make it easy for everyone to see and read it aloud. How do you convince others, maybe those in STEM fields or people who don't understand everything that these scholars and social scientists and humanities do, of the value of these scholars? In other words, we know these scholar skills. How do we help others understand and take a chance, for instance, on hiring or collaborating with scholars in the social sciences, or humanities? So I'm curious who would like to respond here. This is, I hope you don't have to duel to the death to decide, but I'll keep my eyes open. Dr. Berg, I saw you on mute. Would you like to comment here? And others, jump in.
Yeah, I think where people really see these is if most universities have interdisciplinary centers. If you go to some of these meetings and you actually, ask a question and it's pretty interesting, it just comes. I mean, I think so if your university has these interdisciplinary centers where people are talking about maybe behavioral change techniques, or sometimes these are organized around disease and in the medical school regarding diabetes or cancer, attend those, but also make sure that you talk. Go to anything that is a exchange of ideas. We also have, as in the graduate school here, we have a 3-minute thesis where people are trained to very quickly give their elevator speech, but do it in a way that is understandable to other people in other disciplines. I think each field we use a lot of jargon, and if we can get practice in describing this to a smart academic but is not trained in our field, that's really, really good practice. So I think putting yourself out there is a really good idea. Getting connected to mentors who already are doing that can go a long way.
Opening up, any of our other panelists, would you like to respond to this question? Please, Dr. McCulloch.
Anytime you are in a position to situate yourself for a new opportunity, whether it's in a job interview or in a less formal context, I advise folks to think of the thesis statement to the answer that you're giving is, and this is why this experience is relevant to you. So when you talk about work that you're doing professionally, don't just offer, I did this thing, although you should definitely do that, but also round it out to make the connection so that the person you're speaking with can kind of understand and contextualize for themselves where it fits. You have to find that pattern for them, but that's what you're trained to do. So apply that skill when you're talking about new opportunities and connections.
Fantastic. Elsewhere, Dr. McKinney, please.
So it's probably no surprise to anyone that the STEM community is going through a bit of a public relation reckoning with regards to really articulating the impact of our work in a way that matters to society, and who could help us better with connecting our work in STEM to how it can impact people than our colleagues who understand people much better than we do. So I think that there is a major, major opportunity there in this current context for furthering those types of collaborations, particularly around studying research dissemination tactics and things like that. And so I think the opportunities are there. Um, but like what was previously just mentioned, just kind of making sure that you can articulate how you'll be able to contribute to those collaborations would be key.
Mhm. And Dr. Lawson, I saw you nodding along there with the other panelists. Do you have
Yeah,
anything
I
else
just,
that you would like to add?
yeah, Caleb speaking a lot of truths that are very relevant to me as well. I think to the questioner's point, I think thinking about convincing others is sort of an advocacy kind of thing, whereas I think it's more effective to be engaging in that interdisciplinary work and demonstrating your value. A lot of us, a lot of folks don't understand the value that, say, social scientists or humanists might bring to again, this like priority setting, or where do we do our work, where we apply it. But I think where it's most highlighted and most impressive from my perspective is when it becomes part of it's part of an interdisciplinary effort where you can really actually see it in action, because those actions, I think, speak louder. The kind of work that gets done, the questions that get asked, how the data is or information or wherever the topic is. I'm thinking of on my own campus, there's a interdisciplinary center that's teamed between biomedical sciences and social sciences, called the Indigenous Futures Institute, which is focused on a very community advocacy work, branched with the science of physiology, with genetics, with medicine, and identity work and ownership work of who owns information of Indigenous people. And it's a fantastic organization that I think really demonstrates that. And what that's doing is convincing others that this is something we ought to be doing more of. And so I think though that when we find these places where these collaborations are possible and supported, or create them yourselves, or get involved with them, that convincing or that appreciation extends immensely. And so it's important to be involved. It's important to be visible and contributing.
I'm so sorry that we have to wrap at this point, because this has been such a wonderful conversation amongst these wonderful panelists. Please join me, as you'd like, to do a Zoom reaction of some kind, thanking them for their time and thanking them for offering these ideas, experiences, lived and learned about working with or within social sciences and humanities. I'm going to pass it over to Amy just to remind us about the next panel, but thank you again all. And Amy, I'll hand it off to you.
Victoria, yes, just thank you to you, Victoria, and our panelists for their insights during this last hour. And we just want to remind everyone that the next panel will be starting at 2:05 p.m. Eastern. Again, check your email. It is a different link from this Zoom link, but we look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you.